How to be a strategic thinker. Strategic thinking is the big unlock. If you learn strategic thinking, it unlocks a bunch of skills and frameworks you can use to win in business. In this video, I'll give you a step-by-step guide to be a strategic thinker so you can approach any problem with a system that will help you solve that problem in a fuller and more fundamental way, instead of in a band-aid or tactical way. As a strategic thinker, you're able to look at the market landscape and its players and figure out a way to win. It has carryover to every aspect of your business, from building brands and products to crafting the messaging to fulfilling the product or service and then to delighting your customers. Before we go into the guide itself, let's talk about a few reasons why strategic thinking is the big unlock and why it makes sense to master this meta skill. Long-term mindset. A strategic thinker is a long-term thinker. Most of us operate in tactical short-term choices. There's nothing wrong with that, that's how we execute, but the issue is if that's the only thing we do, if we only think in short term. We need points in time to take a pause and reflect on long-term consequences of our decisions. It's the long-term thinking that gets us outsized asymmetric returns, because we can begin to connect the series of short-term actions and improvements and have it compound over an extended period of time to get our big exponential wins. You could, for example, churn out new products and different niches trying to get traction, or you could focus on one product and make improvements that compound over a long period of time and delivers value to the marketplace. Second order consequences. A strategic thinker understands the second order consequence of decisions that we need to make. It helps us be less reactionary and more thoughtful about the decisions we need to make. It's not just what the direct impact of taking an action is, it's the potential consequence or issue that occurs when you take that action. Let's say we hit a growth plateau and now we go open up a new channel of acquisition. Let's say in this example, we start with paid advertising and then we decide to expand to outreach via cold emails. But the second order consequence is we need to divide our attention and resources between two channels, which reduces efficiency as a whole, which means we're spending more in terms of dollars and time and getting less in return. Problem solving. Being a strategic thinker means you are a problem solver. Value is created when you solve problems. The bigger the problem, the more value you are effectively creating by solving that problem. Solving problems is a skill unto itself. We need to be able to size up a problem, break it down into its component parts, and solve each part. And that's effectively how we solve problems of any size. Regardless of whether we're doing business strategy, product strategy, marketing strategy, technology operation strategy, we're solving different types of problems. You want to enter a new market, you're solving a problem. You want to turn around a declining business, you're solving another type of problem. Strategic thinking and problem solving go hand in hand. Storytelling. A strategic thinker is a good storyteller. You're a clear communicator. At some point as a strategic thinker, you need to sell your idea and get buy-in. Clear thinking will help lead to a compelling and persuasive story. The interesting thing is that thinking and storytelling kind of feed off one another. What this means is the act of writing a strategy story will help clarify your thinking itself. A strategy, whether a 1-page or 10-page document, will ultimately need to be constructed as a story because stories are an effective way to communicate an idea. It's no surprise that good strategists tend to also be good storytellers. Decision making. A strategic thinker is a decision maker. If you get stuck easily and can't seem to take a call on how to move forward, well, strategic thinking can help you make a decision. You always have limited time, people, capital, so you have to make decisions. It doesn't mean that if you become a strategic thinker, all your decisions will be correct. Not at all. Plenty of smart people make wrong decisions, but it will help improve the probability of making the right decision and improve the quality of the decision, because you will have a clear rationale on how you arrived at that decision. This is because you're able to identify options, develop a criteria, and allow you to evaluate options so you make a decision that gives you the best chance of success. And more importantly, it will help you move forward and make progress so you can get to your objective. Synthesis. A strategic thinker is a synthesizer. You can look across topics and genres and begin to connect the dots and form insights that give you an edge. Maybe you observe an action in a company that isn't in your industry, but you can see how you can adopt it in your industry. You're a sponge who can absorb large amounts of data and observations, and you can make sense of all that information with common themes and patterns that can often lead to aha moments. Force multiplier. A strategic thinker knows how to look for force multipliers. These are assets and capabilities in a business that will give you large, broad-based impact. Maybe it's a technology asset or AI that improves the productivity of your entire operations and reduces the cost of the whole business. Maybe it's a new sales script that lifts the sales conversion of the entire sales team. A strategic thinker understands leverage and looks at points of leverage where you can do more with less and get a much larger impact for each unit of force that you use. You can begin to see the value in being a strategic thinker and why every leader needs to be a strategic thinker. A strategic thinker is able to go from ambiguity to clarity, which is why strategic thinking is often synonymous with clear thinking. Here is a 7-step guide for strategic thinking that will help you get clear and help you go from idea to action. Step 1. Frame the problem. At the start of any strategy, it's important for us to state the problem correctly because it sets the tone for how we go about our strategy. We want to answer 2 questions when you frame a problem. What is the problem and why is it worth solving? There are more sophisticated ways to build a problem statement, but to get going, these 2 questions help you zero in on the problem we need to solve and gauge the size of the problem. And as we've established earlier, you can deliver big value if you solve big problems. Step 2, chunk it down. How do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time. The key to solving any problem is to be able to break it down into small parts that are more digestible. The goal in chunking the problem down is to not only see all the pieces of a problem, but also to see how they relate to one another. Step 3, conduct analysis. Once we have a map of the pieces of the problem, we can go about solving each of the component parts. We have a way of doing our investigation without getting overwhelmed because we can target each puzzle piece and learn more about it. There are 2 ways we can go about doing our analysis, and usually we end up doing both. The first way is looking at the numbers. We analyze data and try to make sense of it. We look at trends across multiple time frames and the mix and the distribution, or we look at it financially in terms of revenue and profit, or usually in terms of unit economics. The second way is by asking questions. Asking why, for example, until we figure out the root cause. This is more of an investigative approach as we piece together a picture of what's actually going on in our business. The goal here is to find a way to solve the issue in a targeted way. Step 4, form a point of view. After we perform our investigation, we'll have a bunch of inputs that we need to make sense of. So the next logical step is to find the meaning behind all the data and begin to propose ways to solve the problem. Like we discussed earlier in the video, a strategic thinker is a synthesizer. This means you need to look at the inputs and data and come to some kind of conclusion. You need to arrive at a point of view of what you think the issue is and how you might go about solving it. One way to do this is create and compile the so whats at each part of the investigation. We lift up a level and view the whole picture. We find the patterns and meaning in the data, the gold nuggets if you will, and then we can use that to inform our solution and our story. There are many ways to solve a problem, but as a strategic thinker, we need to get comfortable to have a point of view, a specific point of view that we think is the best way to solve that problem and a possible way for us to move forward, and to be able to explain our thinking and give the rationale for it. Step 5, craft a persuasive story. We bring all the pieces together into a strategic narrative. We need to get our answers together into a structured, compelling narrative, one that clearly communicates the challenge and our proposed solution and describes a game plan on how we will build a solution and get to our goals. We can use story structures to help tell our strategy story. For example, we can use something called the Freytag pyramid, where we start with our context, then look at our rising action till we get to our climax, followed by falling action and the resolution. This gives us a flow or structure for our strategy story. The story needs to be persuasive because we need people to buy into our strategy so we can actually execute it. Or if I can say that in a different way, if we can clearly describe the challenge and how our solution can solve that problem and therefore deliver value, we'll get buy-in on our strategy. Step 6, make a decision. After the investigations are complete and we've been able to communicate our story, we might find that there's resistance in pulling the trigger and taking action. We are effectively stuck. It's at this point we need to make a decision so we can progress. And if we don't make a decision, we'll basically be in limbo and our strategy will end up on the shelf. Not making a decision is also the same as saying no to the change and yes to the status quo. So in some ways, a choice is being made either way. So how do we make a decision? There are many frameworks to make decisions, but I find the most useful one is to simply shortlist our criteria between options and then rate the criteria so that we can begin to see the benefits and trade-offs of selecting one option over another. It's rare that an option won't have its downside risks. It's about understanding the trade-offs and then taking a calculated bet. Step 7, take action. Once you've made your decision on your big strategic bet, it's now time to move forward and execute the strategy. The point of strategic thinking and strategy development is to get the answers and confidence to execute in the marketplace. If we don't execute, then the whole exercise is mostly academic. In my experience, I find that it's usually the early stages of execution that is the most difficult. The middle and late parts of execution tend to have quite a bit of momentum behind it to get to the finish line, but the beginning is when the execution of the strategy is the most fragile. It's worth investigating time in creating an execution blueprint, assigning leads to specific parts of the exercise, and then mobilizing people and resources. The bias here is for action rather than for perfection. Once we can get moving, it will tend to gradually build momentum, which carries us most of the way through the execution into launch and then to scale. These 7 steps help you think strategically so you can gain an edge and win in the marketplace. If you're enjoying the strategy content and you want to get access to the tools and training to help you make strategy, then head over to my website, overnightstrategist.com. I've got a bunch of tools and frameworks to inspire your strategy making. Thanks, and see you soon.